My perfect sister accused me of stealing her boyfriend after talking to him for 15 minutes at Christmas. Years later, he discovered all her lies and canceled the wedding at my door, leaving her devastated while my parents blamed me for everything. I'm 24 years old. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer, and I need to get this story off my chest because what happened a few months ago basically destroyed what little was left of my relationship with my family. The truth is, I was never the favorite daughter. I knew that from a young age, but I had no idea things could get as ugly as they did. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was a kid and already felt like something was wrong with me, you know? That feeling that you don't fit in anywhere, not even in your own home. I grew up being basically the black sheep of the family, and it's not like I was a problem child or anything. I was just different from my sister Deanne, who's 5 years older than me and was always the perfect one, the one who did everything right, the one who never caused problems. I, on the other hand, was the weird one. The one who hid in her room during family gatherings. The one who couldn't look people in the eye when talking. The one who trembled when I had to do presentations at school. My parents never understood what was wrong with me. Or rather, they never wanted to understand. To them, I was just shy, antisocial. I needed to try harder, get out of my comfort zone, all those phrases people say when they have no idea what's really going on. My mom would say things like, "Diane doesn't have these problems. Why do you?" As if it were my fault. As if I had chosen to feel this miserable all the time. I spent my entire adolescence feeling completely out of place in my own family. Things that were easy for Diane, like going to parties or talking to strangers or just existing in social spaces, were absolute torture for me. And my parents not only didn't support me, but they actively made me feel worse. I remember one time, I was like 15, almost 16, when I had a panic attack before a big family dinner with all the aunts, uncles, and cousins. And my dad basically told me I was being dramatic, and that if I didn't come down to dinner, I'd be grounded. I went down, obviously, because what else was I going to do? And I spent the entire dinner locked in the bathroom crying while everyone ate and laughed downstairs. Nobody came up to see if I was okay. Not even my mom. Diane, meanwhile, kept being the family star. She got good grades without trying, had a million friends, was popular at school, everything worked out perfect for her. And I hated her for it, honestly. Though now I know it wasn't really her fault. It was more the way my parents treated us differently. But at that moment, I could only see that she had everything I didn't. The relationship between us was never close. We were like strangers living in the same house. She had her perfect life, and I had my room where I hid from the world. Everything changed when I started college. I mean, it didn't change suddenly, but it was the beginning of the change. I went to study in a city that was like 3 hours from my house, and for the first time in my life, I had space to breathe without feeling like my parents were judging me all the time. It was in college where I finally sought real help, because things were getting worse and worse and I knew something wasn't right. I went to the campus mental health service, and after several sessions, they diagnosed me with social anxiety disorder. I finally had a name for what had been happening to me my whole life, and I finally understood it wasn't my fault, that I wasn't weak or dramatic like my parents had always made me feel. I started therapy. They gave me medication, and little by little things improved. It wasn't magical or anything. I still have anxiety and I probably always will, but at least now I have tools to manage it. What also happened during college is I realized I didn't have to keep forcing myself to maintain a relationship with my family if they weren't willing to understand or support what I was going through. So I basically distanced myself. I stopped going to all family gatherings. I only showed up at Christmas and Thanksgiving because I felt like I had to. But the rest of the year, I practically had no contact with them. My parents complained that I was a bad daughter, that I didn't visit them, that I didn't call, but they never asked themselves why. They never really tried to understand my side of the story. The only people in my family I maintained a decent relationship with were my paternal grandparents, who were always more understanding with me. They were the ones who helped me financially during college, when my parents decided that if I wasn't going to make an effort to be part of the family, then they didn't have to pay for my studies completely. My grandparents are good people, really, and they always defended me when my parents talked badly about me, which according to what I learned later happened quite often. Let's fast forward to like a year and a half ago, Christmas 2023. I had already graduated, was working from home doing graphic design, living alone in a small but comfortable apartment, and basically had my life together without my family. But, well, it was Christmas and I felt I should make the effort to go to dinner at my parents' house. I arrived late on purpose to avoid having to socialize much before dinner, and when I walked in, there was a guy I didn't know sitting in the living room with Diane. Turns out it was Owen, Diane's boyfriend. They'd been dating for like 6 months, but I didn't know anything because, you know, we didn't talk. The thing is, Owen was super nice to me from the start. He asked me what I did for a living, showed genuine interest in my work, treated me like a normal person instead of the weird black sheep of the family. And it wasn't anything romantic or anything. It was literally just one person being decent to another person. But I guess for Diane that was too much. During dinner, I noticed Diane was looking at me weird every time Owen talked to me. And at one point, when I went to the kitchen for more wine, she followed me and said something like, "I don't know what you're trying to do, but stay away from my boyfriend." I was like, "What? I've barely talked to him." But she was convinced I was flirting with him or trying to steal his attention or something like that. After that Christmas, things got weird with Diane. She started sending me messages accusing me of random things, like, why had I liked a photo of Owen on Instagram? He didn't even have Instagram at that time. Or why had I asked Mom about him? He never did that. I basically ignored her because I thought it was her problem, not mine. But she kept going and going with her crazy accusations. At one point, she blocked me from all social media, which honestly was a relief because then I didn't have to deal with her paranoid messages. Several months passed without us having contact, and one day my grandparents called me to tell me that Diane had gotten engaged to Owen. They asked me if I already knew, and I told them no, that nobody had told me anything. My grandparents were surprised, because apparently Diane had announced the engagement at a family dinner that I obviously hadn't been invited to. I told them I was happy for her, though honestly I didn't really care, and my grandparents told me I'd surely receive a wedding invitation soon. I seriously doubted that was going to happen considering how things were. But well, I didn't say anything. Sure enough, I never received a formal invitation. What I did receive, like 2 months after I found out about the engagement, was a call from Diane. It was like 10 at night on a Thursday, and she called me crying, saying she needed to talk to me urgently. I was confused because literally we hadn't talked in months and suddenly she was acting like we were close. I asked her what was wrong, and that's when she dropped the bomb. She told me she couldn't invite me to her wedding because Owen had feelings for me. I was like, "What are you saying? This makes no 2 cents." But she insisted that Owen had confessed to her that he felt attracted to me and that's why she couldn't risk having me at the wedding. I told her that was ridiculous, that I had seen Owen literally once in my life, at that Christmas, and we'd had a normal conversation of like 15 minutes total. I told her that if Owen had really told her that, then maybe she should rethink whether she wanted to marry someone who supposedly had feelings for his sister-in-law he didn't even know. Diane got really angry and started yelling at me, saying I'd always been a horrible person, that I'd always tried to ruin her life. All these completely crazy accusations that had no basis in reality. I just hung up the phone because I wasn't going to stay, listening to her screaming. I thought that was the end of the story, that Diane would have her wedding without me and I'd go on with my life. But no, things got much worse. Like a week later, I got another call from Diane. This time she sounded desperate. She told me the wedding was canceled, that Owen had broken up with her, and that it was all my fault. I was completely confused because I had no idea what had happened or how I could have anything to do with it. Diane explained through sobs that Owen had called off the wedding because he found out how the family treated me and he thought it was cruel. Apparently someone, probably one of my uncles or some relative at some gathering, had casually mentioned that I wasn't going to be at the wedding, and Owen asked why. When they told him it was because Diane hadn't invited me, he started asking more questions and eventually found out the whole story of how I'd been treated by the family for years. Owen apparently told Diane he couldn't marry someone who was capable of excluding her own sister from her wedding out of irrational jealousy, and who had also lied to him about the reason. Because yes, Diane had lied to him saying I couldn't go because I had other plans or something. And when Owen discovered the truth, that she had falsely accused me and uninvited me, he got really angry. I don't know all the details of what happened between them, but the result was that Owen canceled the wedding and gave her back the ring. Diane called me crying, telling me all this was my fault, that I had ruined her life, that if I had been a better sister, none of this would have happened. I tried to reason with her, but it was impossible. She was convinced I had done something to sabotage her relationship, when in reality I had done absolutely nothing. I told her maybe she should reflect on why her boyfriend had reacted that way when he found out how she treated me, but she just kept blaming me. The conversation ended with her yelling at me and hanging up on me. I thought that was the end of it, but oh, surprise. A week later, I get another call from Diane. This time, her tone was completely different. She was being super sweet and nice, almost as if we were best friends. She tells me that she and Owen are trying to work things out, that he agreed to give her another chance, but there's one condition. Owen wants me to be at the wedding. Diane tells me she needs me to go to the rehearsal dinner, to act like I'd always been invited, and if anyone asks, to say I couldn't go before because of work, but I was always included in the plans. Basically, she wanted me to lie to save her relationship. I told her no, that was ridiculous. I explained I wasn't going to be part of her lie, that she had deliberately excluded me and now had to face the consequences of her actions. Diane started begging, saying that if I didn't help her, she was going to lose Owen forever. Please do it for her. We're sisters. I told her that if we were sisters, then she wouldn't have treated me like that in the first place, and that it wasn't my responsibility to fix the mess she had created herself. Diane got angry again and told me I was a selfish and horrible person, and I simply told her it wasn't going to change my mind and hung up. And the next day, this was like a Friday afternoon. I'm at home working when I hear someone knocking on the door super aggressively. I open it and there are my parents, Diane, and to my surprise, Owen. Everyone looks super angry except Owen, who looks more uncomfortable. My parents start yelling at me immediately, saying, how can I be so selfish? How can I ruin my sister's life like this? That I have to go to that rehearsal dinner and do what Diane asked me. I tell them I didn't invite them in and to leave, but they don't move. My dad tells me that if I don't help Diane, then he and my mom are going to cut contact with me definitely. And I basically tell him we don't have contact anyway, so it's not really a threat. Diane is crying dramatically, saying, I just want to make her suffer, that I've always been jealous of her, that I've never wanted her to be happy. I look at her and tell her in front of everyone, including Owen, that she was the one who told me I couldn't go to her wedding because supposedly Owen had feelings for me. There was total silence when I said that. Owen looks at me confused and asks, what? Diane immediately starts denying everything, saying I'm lying, that I'm trying to cause problems, but I tell Owen I can show him the messages if he wants. That I have everything recorded because Diane had been sending me messages accusing me of things for months. Owen asks Diane if that's true, if she really accused me of that, and Diane keeps denying it, but you can see on her face she's lying. Owen looks devastated and tells her he can't believe she did that she had promised him I'd been invited from the beginning, and there had just been a misunderstanding. Diane starts crying harder, saying Owen is believing me instead of her, that I'm trying to steal her boyfriend. All these crazy accusations again. At that moment, my parents intervene and start defending her, saying I've always been problematic, that I have mental problems, that you can't trust what I say. That's what made me explode. Honestly. I told them that yes, I have social anxiety disorder, a disorder I developed largely thanks to how they treated me during my entire childhood, ignoring my problems and making me feel like I was a burden to the family. I told them the reason we don't have a relationship is because they chose Diane over me in every situation, that they never supported me when I needed them, that they basically made me feel like I wasn't part of the family. My mom tells me I'm being dramatic, that they always treated Diane and me equally, but I tell her that's a lie, and she knows it. I remind her of all the times my problems were ignored while Diane was celebrated for absolutely everything. My dad tells me to stop blaming them for my problems and to take responsibility for my life, and I tell him that's exactly what I've been doing. That's why I distanced myself from them in the first place. Diane in the middle of all this. Argument comes up to me and yells that all this is my fault, that if I hadn't been so nice to Owen at Christmas, none of this would have happened. And then, I don't know what went through her head, but she slapped me. I was in shock for a second because I couldn't believe she had actually hit me. Owen immediately gets between us and tells Diane to calm down. What was wrong with her? My parents are standing there not knowing what to do. Obviously, they're not going to defend me. Owen asks me if I'm okay, and I tell him, yes, I just want everyone to leave my house. He nods and tells my parents and Diane they should all leave. Diane starts begging him not to go, that she loves him, that they can fix this. But Owen just shakes his head and tells her he can't marry someone who treats their family like this and who also constantly lies to him. He gives her back the ring right there at my door, and I can see Diane is absolutely devastated, but honestly, at that moment, I didn't care. Owen apologizes to me for all the drama and leaves. My parents and Diane stay there for a few more seconds. My parents looking at me like I'm the worst person in the world, and Diane crying hysterically. I tell them again to leave, and they finally do. I close the door and stand there shaking because the whole situation was super intense and my anxiety was through the roof. And the following days, I received like a million messages from different relatives. Some told me I was a bad person for not helping my sister. Others told me I should apologize. Some even told me I should stay away from Owen because it was clear I wanted to be with him, which is completely false. I have no romantic interest in Owen, nor did I ever. I blocked most of those relatives because I didn't have the energy to deal with their opinions about a situation they knew nothing about. What I did do was write a long post on Facebook, explaining the whole situation from my perspective. I explained about my social anxiety disorder, about how I was treated during my childhood, about Diane's false accusations, about everything. I didn't mention names except my own, but obviously people who knew my family knew who I was talking about. I received a lot of support from friends and acquaintances who had no idea what I'd been through, and that made me feel a bit better. Some relatives sent me private messages apologizing because they didn't know things had been that bad, including a couple of cousins I'd been close with when I was young. My grandparents also called me to support me. They told me they'd always known my parents treated me differently, but they hadn't realized how bad the situation had been. They told me they were going to talk to my parents, though I doubted that was going to change anything. The relationship with my grandparents is basically the only family relationship I maintain now, and honestly, it's enough for me. About a month passed after all that drama, and I thought things were finally going to calm down, but no. One morning I woke up, and when I left my house, I saw someone had thrown eggs all over my facade. At first, I thought maybe it was neighborhood kids being silly, but then I saw that in my mailbox there was a note that said horrible things about me, and I recognized Diane's handwriting. I also started receiving calls and messages from unknown numbers saying ugly things to me, and eventually I realized Diane had posted my phone number somewhere, probably in some Facebook group or something. I had to change my phone number and report the egg vandalism to the police, though I didn't press formal charges. I just wanted it documented in case Diane decided to do something more serious. I sent her a message from my new number, telling her that if she did anything like that again, I was going to file a formal complaint, and that I also considered what she was doing to be criminal harassment. After that, she finally stopped bothering me. I guess she realized I was serious. Now, it's November 2025, and I basically have no contact with my parents or Diane. My grandparents tell me from time to time how things are with them, but I don't ask much because honestly I'm not interested. As far as I know, Diane hasn't had any serious relationship since Owen, and my parents still blame me for everything that happened. Some relatives still look at me weird on the few occasions we run into each other, but most already understood that Diane was the one who caused all this problem with her jealousy and her lies. The truth is, my life is much better without all that family drama. My mental health has improved a lot. I'm still in therapy and on medication, but I feel more stable than ever. I have good friends, my work is going well, and I don't miss at all the toxic dynamic I had with my family. Sometimes I wonder if things could have been different, if my parents had taken my anxiety problems seriously when I was young, if they had supported me instead of constantly comparing me to Diane, but I guess there's no point thinking about that now. The only thing that does bother me from time to time is that my parents are never going to admit they did anything wrong. To them, I'm still the problematic daughter who ruined their perfect daughter's life, and they'll probably always think that way. But well, that's their version of the story, and they have the right to believe it if they want. I know what really happened, and the important people in my life know it too, and that's the only thing that matters at the end of the day.